Hey, Marc, Millan here. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. And I wanted to talk today and do a little devotional on the purpose of worship. And being a worship leader myself, this is kind of something I've continually tried to learn and grow in and study not only through books, but through reading of scripture and following worship leaders, reading blogs, attending conferences. And so I want to just start at Isaiah chapter 6, and then I might move to Revelation and some other parts of the Bible. But I feel like Isaiah chapter 6 helps me get to the major points of some of the things that have made it clear for me. And so maybe you are growing in your worship, or perhaps this can help someone who's growing in their worship. So let's jump in. I'm reading Isaiah chapter 6, and I'm reading from the NASB Bible. I'm just going to read down from verse 1. So it says this: In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, lofty and exalted, with the train of his robe filling the temple. Seraphim stood above him, each having 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called out to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the thresholds trembled at his voice, of him who called out, while the temple was filling with smoke. Verse 5. Then I said, Woe is me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Verse 6. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a burning coal in his hand, which he had taken from the altar with tongs. He touched my mouth with it and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, and your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is forgiven. And then verse 8, Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here I am, send me. So this is Isaiah's experience. This is a revelation and a vision that the prophet Isaiah had. The book of Isaiah is one of the most intriguing books of all of Scripture. It's 66 chapters, which is interesting because the Bible has 66 books. So in a lot of ways, it kind of sits and represents so many things of the Bible. The book of Isaiah also prophesies about Jesus more accurately than almost any of the other books in the Old Testament. Of course, Isaiah was young during this vision. King Uzziah had died, so Isaiah was serving as one of the prophets. And now the king is dead. And back in those times, when the king was ruling and reigning, the people of Israel had direction, they had guidance, they had covering. And so the death of Uzziah is pronounced at the beginning of the chapter just to set the tone, to say, what are we going to do right now, right? What happens to the people of God right now? And there's a couple of things that jump out just in the passages we read. Seraphim, so there's 3 types of angels that the Bible talks about. There are angels that appear like humans. When the angels came and got Lot out of Gomorrah, they appeared to him, and they walked towards him, and the people in the town recognized them. They must have looked like humans because they thought they were. And so you have angels, then you have seraphim, and then you have cherubim as well. So those are the 3 that we see. Of course, archangels, there's 2 mentioned. There's Gabriel and there's Michael. But the interesting thing about the seraphim is the way they're made. They have 2 wings, I guess, that would be able to cover their eyes, and then they have 2 that would cover their feet, and then they fly with 2 of them. So that's 6 wings. And as I read this, you could just kind of imagine, why would they need wings to cover their eyes, but I think that's because of the glory of the Lord. The brightness and the intensity of God's glory was so much so that God gave them kind of a way to like put sunglasses on, like, okay, you can't deal with all of my glory, so let me give you something to help you. So I love that, but God doesn't remove their ability to see it. He just gives them an opportunity to be able to, I guess, manage it as they're receiving it. Another thing is that one called out to another. We read in verse 3, so there was more than one was calling to another, which gives us a picture of the ark. Remember, the ark had two angels that looked at one another, and that's kind of that picture of one angel calling out to the other the glory of the Lord. What I love about Isaiah 6 and the picture here is that Isaiah sees the Lord and he sees his glory. So the very first verse, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne. He was lofty and exalted. So he just saw the image of something that was lifted up and was glorious. And then he saw the surrounding, right? He sees the environment of the angels, then the voice of one crying out to another, and then the temple shook. He sees all this power and glory happening. And then he has a revelation of his own condition. So I would call this the conviction moment, right? The moment of revelation when we realize that we are not holy. And I think if you're going to grow in your worship, you have to come to the place of self-awareness of like, God is holy and I am not. And I've had a few of those moments with great intensity, where I just realized the holiness of God has this tangible power to it. And there was something about my body and my soul that recognized his holiness. It recognized it in a way to say, I am not that. I'll give you an example. My daughter loves working with horses. She has worked at a horse stable before, and so she's very comfortable around them. And so every once in a while when I would go pick her up after she was kind of serving there, I would go and she would take me to see some of the horses. And just standing next to the animals, and they're just a majestic power to them. And some of them are so tall, and just getting near them, hearing them breathe, putting my hand either on their neck or just on the side of their body and feeling that power. There's just a recognition of my body and my mind and my senses going, this is extremely beautiful, powerful, in a way a little scary. And so you could imagine, this is the King of glory, the Lord of hosts that Isaiah has a vision of. And now he comes to the place of revelation for himself, where he says, woe is me, I am ruined. Like, I am done. Like, this is not a good situation for me. I see the King of glory, I see his holiness, I see what he's surrounded by. And all of that bright light has shined the light on who I really am. And I'm done. I'm unclean. I'm part of people that are unclean. And now I can't unsee what my soul has seen. And then you have this beautiful picture of an angel coming to touch his mouth, to touch his lips, and to cleanse him. It's a foretelling of the forgiveness to come for us, right? Touches him with it, and then he tells him, your iniquity is taken away and your sin is forgiven. So Isaiah sees the Lord. That's the first part of worship for us. You cannot worship without revelation of God. And so, why do we lift our hands? Why do we sing? Why do we close our eyes? Why do we bow down? I mean, these are all words in the Bible that we could study at another time, but the true act of worship is the heart responding to God, right? It's like love expressed. It's responding to the magnificence of who you see. And so worship is a revelation. We get revelation of who God is, and then we respond. We have to. There's no, I would say that you can't worship without revelation. I mean, revelation is the catalyst of worship. You might be able to pronounce praise. You might be able to pronounce who God is, but that's just words. That could be words memorized. That could be things you've learned. That could be things that other people have said, but the heart has a certain posture to it. It has a certain engagement to it that responds, almost like a grandchild responds to their grandparents. If you have grandparents and you've ever seen them with their grandchildren, all the child has to do is extend their hands, and grandma and grandpa would extend their hands. That's a response to the connection and revelation of that relationship. Nobody's really doing anything special, but they just see. There's a seeing and a responding. And so to me, the big thing on worship is seeing who the Lord is and then responding. And so when we first come to Christ, we have this moment of conviction. We all come to that moment of conviction, realizing that we have sin in our lives and salvation only comes through Jesus Christ. And then we see that, but it doesn't stop there. The last verse I read, which was verse 8, says, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord." And that's so important. He saw the Lord, he saw what was happening, but after he received forgiveness and salvation, he was able to hear God's instruction. And God said, "Whom shall I send?" And then he said, "Send me, here am I." And so the purpose of worship was to reveal salvation, to understand where salvation comes from, but ultimately for us to take the message of that hope and salvation somewhere. And that's the part of worship I think sometimes we miss. We want to worship because we've either had a bad day, we've had a tough week, or we love singing, we love spending time in the presence of God. But that last verse is so important. Then I heard where does the Lord want me to go? What does the Lord want me to do today? So for me, the conclusion of our worship is, where does God send us, and what are we doing with that revelation? And if that's not happening, I think we haven't gotten to that deeper place with our worship. We see the Lord, it convicts us, it transforms us, and reminds us of the gift of His grace and His love and His salvation. But then it leads us to a posture of like, God, what are you saying and what are you doing today? And God's able to tell that to my heart. And then I go, okay, send me, Lord. Where do you need me to go? Who do you need me to talk to? Who do you need me to be available for? Who do you need me to go pray for and stuff? So Isaiah chapter 6, another chapter, if you want to take a look at it, I think is Revelation chapter 4 and 5. Great picture of eternity. All of heaven and earth are responding to Jesus, and they're casting their crowns, and they're just responding to the magnificence of God. So for me, it's all about receiving revelation, seeing the Lord's glory, allowing the Lord's glory to remind us of our need for His salvation, but also realizing that we have salvation through Jesus Christ. And now allowing our hearts to be open to hear what is He saying, so that He can go out and send us, so that we could show others and share with others the hope of His glory and His love. So I hope that helps you in your journey in learning a little bit more about worship as I have. And until next time, from my heart to yours.